No vandalism, please.
Tonight on City News Connect, an ongoing investigation into the Edmonton police shooting of 28-year-old Mathios Arkangelo. On June 29th, 2024, the young man from a South Sudanese immigrant family was shot and killed by a member of the Edmonton Police Service right here on a residential street in Edmonton's Fraser neighborhood. Shortly after his death, Arkangelo's family publicly released a 25-minute-long video compiled of footage from security cameras along the street. That video opening the floodgates for public opinion on whether or not the officer should have fired his gun and raising questions about police transparency. I'm Bianca Millions. Join me as we delve into the details of this controversial case and a warning, some video may be disturbing to viewers.
He was special, right? And that's why it really hurts, like for most people, that he was gone, because it seemed like a waste of life.
According to an affidavit filed by the Edmonton Police Service that has not been proven in court, Arkangelo was the driver and only occupant of a vehicle that crashed and rolled over on the east leg of the Anthony Henday at approximately 9:05 p.m. on June 29th. Witnesses allegedly saw him drinking liquor outside the vehicle, leading police to believe he was impaired. Arkangelo then fled the scene on foot. An officer, referred to in the affidavit as John Doe Number 1, in a bid to protect his anonymity for safety reasons, searched the area where police believed Arkangelo was, the intersection of Fraser Way and Fraser Vista.
He was just pacing around trying to figure out what to do. In my opinion, it seemed like he was in distress. I'm not there, but that's what it seems like. And even the people that are living, the neighbors, they said he asked them to call the police, although my brother had his own phone in his hand, so they said he just seemed confused.
In the video compiled by the Arkangelo family, we see Arkangelo wandering the street and sidewalk for some time. At one point, he sits against a pole, his phone in his hand.
He was actually just talking to my mom on the phone. He just gave my mom a call.
Do you know what he said to your mom? Has she told you?
I think she really said, "Hey, Mom, I love you," and then he just like, "Oh, I gotta go." That's what he said to her.
In John Doe Number 1's statement, he says he located Arkangelo about 100 meters away. When Arkangelo noticed the police car with lights on, he put his cell phone in his pocket and placed his hands in the air. John Doe 1 says he confirmed over his radio that Arkangelo was arrestable for failing to remain at the scene of a collision, and he could proceed with an arrest. The officer then parked his cruiser about 20 meters away from Arkangelo, who he says seemed submissive in his demeanor. He got out of his vehicle, leaving the driver's door open, and positioned himself in line with the edge of the door. Then, he says Arkangelo's demeanor changed. As the officer allegedly announced, "Police, you're under arrest, get on the ground," Arkangelo failed to do so. He reached into his right pants pocket and pulled out a black pocket knife, which he unfolded, exposing the blade. The officer immediately unholstered his gun, citing the open knife as a usable deadly weapon, making Arkangelo a lethal threat. In his statement, John Doe Number 1 says he broadcast through his radio, "Drop the knife," repeatedly. He continued to command Arkangelo to, quote, "Drop the knife, stop moving towards me, get on the ground. If you continue to walk towards me, you will be shot." Though unproven, according to the officer, Arkangelo responded, "I'm a dangerous man. Kill me, kill me. Come on, kill me." With his arms up and an open knife in one hand, Arkangelo advanced a few more steps. The officer, in his statement, says that at this point he feared for his life, as his commands were not followed, and that Arkangelo had a weapon. He felt he had no options left but to use his gun. The unnamed officer fired 2 shots into Arkangelo's chest. Arkangelo still took steps towards the officer, who fired a 3rd shot at his head but missed. Then Arkangelo collapsed to the ground.
It was June 30th at around 4 in the morning, 4:30. I received a phone call from my older sister, Viola, just like screaming, saying, "Oh, Matt ran away from a scene, and the police found him and shot him."
Mattius Arkangelo was, as his brother puts it, the baby boy of the family. He was born in Sudan in a time of civil war, and his mother moved the family to Egypt when Matt was 2. They lived there 4 years before coming to Canada. At 28, Matt was a father to his only son, aged 7 at the time of his father's death.
We were raised by a single mom, and so all we had was kind of each other, right? Like coming to Canada, we just have my immediate family, and then over time we just started making our own family as we're here. So that's all we had was ourselves. So family was kind of very important to him.
After they received the news that Arkangelo had been killed, his brother says the family had very little information. It was the Canada Day long weekend and no one was answering their calls. Instead, the family found a video on Instagram that identified Arkangelo. How did that make you feel before you had any facts, any information, to see somebody else's, I'm assuming, cell phone video on the internet of your brother?
It was like, you just felt like a really, really bad dream, because never in a million years would I thought my family member would get shot by police. It was just sad. That's all it is. Sad, confusing, and just unreal. That's why we needed more.
Since his death, Arkangelo's family has been persistently keeping his name in the public eye, holding vigils, protests outside police stations, fundraising to help pay for a lawyer in a civil suit.
Justice for us is just having when you watch the video and when everything that transpired, is having everybody that were there being held accountable, right? From like John Doe 1 for, shooting a man with their hands up, and then to the other officers when they came in, instead of trying to help somebody, like a human being that's laying there bleeding. So we want them all to be held accountable.
The Arkangelo family questions the officer's training. Did the unnamed officer follow protocol during this interaction? A criminologist and former Edmonton police inspector weighs in. The family of Mattius Arkangelo says that they have many questions left unanswered after he was shot and killed by an Edmonton police officer in late June 2024. They believe lack of training played a role in his death. That's not a belief shared by a former officer and current criminologist.
That officer was following the same training I took, very similar training that I took, and that's what I was taught to do what he did.
Dan Jones is the chair of justice studies at Norquest College and a retired police inspector. He says when Arkangelo removed a knife from his pocket and exposed the blade, the officer appears to follow proper training protocol.
Specifically when it comes to edged weapons, they give you what's called the 21-foot rule. And if someone is within 21 feet of you and you have a firearm, that if they are advancing at you within that 21 feet, they are a lethal threat and they can get to you if they're going fast enough before you can disable that person with your firearm.
The security camera videos show multiple angles, suggesting that Arkangelo had his hands up for most of the interaction, though an open knife was in his right hand as he held it up. The video itself has proven to be very controversial, some saying that he could not have been a threat as he was not holding the knife in a way that could have harmed the officer.
I stopped seeing the knife. I had a similar situation, and all I saw was the person and you start to get that ocular and audio occlusion, and things just narrow down. And now you're seeing a person that has a knife advancing on you. And everything is based on a reasonable officer's perception. It's not based on what the video shows, because the video is going to look very differently to you and me when we're watching that at our desks than it looks to the officer who is facing someone who is larger than him, who is carrying a weapon and is walking towards him.
In John Doe No. 1's statement, he says he fired 2 rounds into Arkangelo's chest. When Arkangelo took steps towards him, he fired another round at his head that missed. To the public, the number of shots may seem excessive or unwarranted entirely.
When you're a police officer, what you're trained to do is shoot for the center mass, so the biggest part of the body, because, again, when you're under stress, that your fine motor skills are gone. So you are able to pull that trigger, but you're focusing on the center of mass. And it's not shoot to kill. I hear that all the time. It's shoot to stop. And there is a thing called the failure to neutralize drill. And that is, if you shoot someone twice to the body and they keep advancing, your next shot goes up to the head. And that's to to neutralize the threat. And that's how you're trained.
Dini Arkangelo, the victim's brother, filed an affidavit with his own noted discrepancies between the security camera video compiled and the officer's statement of events.
In my opinion, like, he had leverage, all the leverage there, right? So he had like the gun, he had the vehicle, he had maybe bulletproof vest, and also the distance, right? He was, when I measured it, at least 30 feet away, at least. So, yeah. We don't understand. That's why we kind of, for me, it's just like, is it lack of training? Is it, like, what is it?
Jones suggests it was the opposite, an officer performing his job exactly as he was trained to do.
I hate second guessing, and I hate being the armchair quarterback. Could you have tried talking longer? Could you have waited? We all, sitting in my desk watching it, sure, we can all, and I bet you if he sat in his desk and watched it, not in the moment, I bet you he would say, there's things I could have done differently, or I wished I'd have done differently. Because I don't think people also realize when a police officer does shoot somebody and kill somebody, this isn't over in a day. This is years. This is going through the ACERT investigation, getting potentially cleared, or potentially getting charged, right? You don't know. So then you don't get charged. Then it goes to internal hearing. So it goes under the Police Act. You could get charged under the Police Act. You could get dismissed. And then take away all that and go to the psychological impact of taking a life. And people often forget that there's a trauma in that. And when you could talk about things like post-traumatic stress disorder, and police aren't sociopaths, and vast majority of people aren't sociopaths. Is there something I could have done differently? I would suggest at the moment that he was there, he did not think there was another option.
Jones says that while, in his informed opinion, the unnamed officer did exactly as he was trained to do, an outcome of the case could be a look at changing training protocol.
What you're seeing is the person following the training that they're given. Now, is the training something that we should start looking at and maybe change the way police train? Maybe, right? That's how things grow. We look at these things and we make determinations, and there'll be a fatality inquiry, and maybe one of the things that comes out of the fatality inquiry is police need to look at the way that they do this type of training.
After the break, the Arkangelo family files a $1 million lawsuit against the Edmonton Police Service, what they hope to achieve, and the conversation around police transparency. After Mathios Arkangelo was killed, his family filed a $1 million lawsuit against the officer who fired the fatal shots, the 3 immediate responding officers, and then Police Chief Dale McPhee. Dini Arkangelo says the lawsuit is not about the money, but rather seeking justice for what they believe was an unwarranted death.
Hopefully, by doing this, things will change in the future, right? Because at a certain point, like, what we're doing doesn't really help us anymore, right? Because he's gone. All we want is him back, but if we could do anything that'll, prevent this from happening in the future again, that'd be, like, I guess, a good legacy for my brother.
In response to the lawsuit, Edmonton police filed an application to protect the name of John Doe No. 1, the officer involved in the shooting, including a publication ban and an injunction that would block the Arkangelo family and their supporters from identifying the officers involved in the lawsuit. According to the affidavit, there have been credible death threats made to John Doe No. 1's life.
We think, obviously, that it's important that the public knows, especially the name of the shooter. Because think of it, if you're dealing with a police officer and he's got a gun, taser, baton, and you know that this officer has shot and killed someone, I think that the public has the right to know. That person has a right to know, oh, that's the guy who shot and killed Arkangelo.
I'll go back to Robert Peel for a second. Police are the public and the public are the police. The only difference is the police get paid full time to deal with the protection of society. So if we are part of the community, we have to be part of the community, good, bad, and ugly.
I reached out to the Edmonton Police Service for an interview. They declined to speak on camera, providing a statement saying, Quote, "The Edmonton Police Service continues to acknowledge the tragedy of this incident and the effect it has had on the community. Likewise, we appreciate the impacts of this lengthy investigation on the victim's grieving family and the EPS members involved. Like them, we await the results of the ACERT investigation and the clarity and answers we hope it will provide for all parties. The EPS believes transparency is important in fostering and maintaining respect for the administration of justice at all levels. However, we understand that thorough investigations take time, and transparency too early may taint this process and undermine the outcome for the victim's family and the EPS. As a result, we are unable to comment further at this time, and we trust that those who continue to advocate for effective oversight for policing will also respect the system and processes set up to do so."
Police legitimacy is a concept where if the community sees the police as a legitimate power holder, all kinds of things change. Crime goes down. People will make complaints about things like sexual violence when we know that's under complained about. A lot of that's because of police legitimacy. People will feel safer in their communities if the police are seen as a legitimate power holder, and that legitimacy is oftentimes gotten and gained by the police being transparent in their actions. What I've seen over the years is what I almost seem like a move away from transparency, where police say, no, we can't say anything because it's an ongoing investigation. Well, sure, there's a 26-minute video out there that everyone is watching. I don't believe that that's an investigative integrity issue. I believe when those things come out, it's incumbent upon the police to do a better job of communicating with the people out there, because when you reduce that legitimacy, the opposite happens. Crime goes up. Assaults on police officers goes up. Police have to use more force because people don't see the police as legitimate.
According to collaborative research done by a group called Tracking Injustice, since the year 2000, there have been 804 police-involved deaths where force was used in Canada. 61 of those 804 people were Black, or 7.6% of the total. The 2021 census reported that Black people make up 4.3% of Canada's population, making them overrepresented in police use of force deaths.
Well, it's a fact that Matt was Black. And it's also a fact that force is used disproportionately in Canada, throughout Canada, against Black people and Indigenous people. Those are facts. And so when something like this happens, that flag is going to be raised. Now, did that inform the shooter in terms of his actions? I don't know. I can't imagine the shooter admitting that, but he's probably going to say, oh, it's a really tall man, you know, and he was afraid. Well, did race inform his fear? I don't know.
So number one, you're taught that everyone is a threat. That's what you're taught in training, and that's an officer safety thing. And is that necessary? And again, maybe we need to look at how we train a little bit. Maybe we need to, but we want our officers to be safe, and we know that that's important. Safety is important. But then our biology tells us something too. So our biology, if something does not look like me, my biology tells me I should be fearful of that thing. And it's about proximity. So like proximity breeds care and distance breeds fear. So if you're not proximate to someone that doesn't look like you, then that person you might be afraid of that person until you get to know that they're not a threat. But if you're taught that it's a threat, and now your biology is telling you that something that doesn't look like you is a threat, it might heighten your expectation of violence from that individual.
Still to come, what the police chief had to say about the incident and where the investigation lies now, nearly a year later. Though the Edmonton Police Service declined to speak on camera for this CityNews Connect, CityNews interviewed the then Chief of Edmonton Police, Dale McPhee, in December of 2024. McPhee is named in the civil lawsuit filed by the Arkangelo family.
We acknowledge, and anytime something like this happens, we know there's people that are hurting, and rightfully so, and for that, you know, obviously the condolences, but I mean, to pin that on a slice of video to say that the officer acted inappropriately, I think is not real good practice either. There's going to be lots of video on that. I would suspect there'll be independent witnesses on that. There's going to be a whole lot of evidence that we need to flow to make the appropriate decision, because we've seen this many, many times in the past. Same group goes out, they try to make an issue on social media of it, they rile the community up, and unfortunately nobody's happy because the results prove something different. And we don't know if that'll be in this case, but we will get those determinations when it's a thorough investigation.
If there is an incident in Alberta involving police that results in serious harm or death, the investigation is turned over to the province's police watchdog, the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team. ACERT is an independent agency made up of civilian investigators and seconded police investigators. The ACERT investigation into the death of Mattius Arkangelo could take years. The time it takes to complete an investigation varies greatly. At the time of this City News Connect airing, the court has yet to decide if the Edmonton Police's application to issue a publication ban will be approved or not. It's a long road ahead for all parties involved. Dini Arkangelo says that while he'd like answers faster, at the end of each day, he still just misses his brother.
The thing is, like, every day, like, he's just in my head, right? Like, I just see his face, and then I just feel sad because he was my little brother. And then the guilt comes in, right? You're kind of sometimes like, oh, I should have answered the phone more, should have been there more. That's what, on my side, that's what runs in my head a lot. Like, what could I have done to prevent it, to get to that point even?
That's all for this edition of City News Connect. If you have a news story to share, visit edmonton.citynews.ca and click on Submit a News Tip. Thanks for watching, and good night.